Sometimes the hobby can be a ton of fun, and then at other times you can start to wonder why you spend so much money on photos of men on cardboard. I got into the hobby in 1983 and I started being a sports card dealer in 1986, and from 86 to 91 I did a show almost every single weekend and I accumulated around 8 million cards. Now over the last 10 years I've been selling most of those cards, and what I wanted to come on this week and show you guys is what are the 10 lessons that I've learned from being a sports card dealer. Welcome back to EDI Sports Show. As you can see, it is a lot of hard work to sell cards at a card show, being a sports card dealer. But we're going to get into the top 10 things that I learned, top 10 lessons that I learned being a sports card dealer. So if you are interested in all 10 of those things, I also have a special bonus free PDF for you at the end, so do not click away. That's right, I have a special free PDF for you at the very end. So what we're going to do in this episode is we're going to go over the top 10 lessons. And so why don't we just kind of get into them. So here we go. First lesson is the value of the dollar. And what that means is, well, how much money, like how many cards can you buy for a buck? Or how far can you stretch your money? Or even just what is the value? What is the actual value of the things that you want to buy? And this goes well beyond just sports cards. We're talking about, real estate and home prices. We're talking about cars. We're talking about appliances, clothes, food, and restaurant. How do you know that you're actually getting a deal for however much? Like if there's a price fix menu, how do you know it's a good deal or not? Because what if the food is not good enough and you're sort of like, I'm overpaying for food? Kind of there's some restaurants that have raised their prices. Like even fast food has raised their prices and people are like, it's fast food. I'm not getting the value anymore. McDonald's used to have a dollar value meal. Well, that's gone. Like what is the dollar value anymore? And so that's the issue. Now, if you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, hit the subscribe button right now because I want to make sure that this goes out to everybody. So what's lesson number 2? And that is product marketing. Now, I actually made a little video to kind of do a little multimedia. So here we go. We're going to watch this video for you. So what I wanted to do is give you an idea of all the cards that I was
One of the things that I learned being a dealer is how to do product marketing. And the basics of product marketing is actually the look of your table. So this cardboard is simulating a display case. I can't find mine right now, so unfortunately. But if you have a display case, you have basically 3 rows. And so what you want to do is right in the middle, you want to put the most kind of show-stopping thing right in the middle, because that's pretty much where everybody's eye is going to go when they walk up or walk near your table. They're going to see that middle piece, and that needs to be your showcase, like showstopper. So for me, I always like to put the most iconic card. So in this case, in this product display, I have the 1989 Ken Griffey rookie card. The reason is because every time somebody sees that card, they stop. Whether or not they're going to buy it doesn't matter. It's all about stopping somebody at your table so that you can then engage in a conversation with them. And so product marketing is such a valuable thing to learn. Now, what does product marketing mean? Not just in sports cards, but in everything. It's the packaging. It's how the product looks, how it's displayed. What are you telling the customer about? So if you're building a product and you need a box, the box needs to say, this is what I do. Therefore, the person who's looking for it goes, that's what I want. And so that's the same thing you're doing here with this product marketing is you're trying to display stuff that customers actually want to buy. And so when I decide what I'm going to put into a case, this is sort of the conversation I'm having with myself. What exactly do customers want? And so this is where we'll get into some of the other things that I learned, which is market research, so that you will understand, like, how do you know what products to put out?
So that is the answer to that question, and I obviously, go over that. So lesson 3 is about market research, exactly what I said in lesson 2. And market research is all about what do people actually want to buy, and you don't know that until you start actually talking to people, which brings us to lesson number 4, which is listening skills. So how do you actually listen? Now, one of the things that I do in my professional life is I teach 21st century skills. One of them happens to be leadership. So leadership is a 21st century skill. I know a lot of people say, well, it's a soft skill, and it's not. It's a necessity in the 21st century. And one of the fundamentals of good leadership skills or healthy leadership skills is the ability to actively listen to someone else. And this plays a big part in sports cards, because how do you know what someone actually wants to buy? And you have to listen to them. So you have to ask questions, and then you need to shut up. And I know that's hard for a lot of you in the sports card hobby, is you like to talk, you like to hear yourself talk, and so you don't listen all that much. Obviously, I think a lot of people get a false sense of who I am because you just see me talking on YouTube every single week. And so you have this assumption that I just talk all the time and I don't listen to anyone. That's actually the opposite in real life. In real life, I do far less talking than I do in terms of listening. I am always listening to people in the hobby. I'm listening to what it is that they want. And I ask the question, whenever I am a dealer behind a table, or if I go to a show, I'm always asking the dealers, what's the one card that's selling the most? Or what's the one player that's the hottest? I want to know from the dealers, from collectors, like what is the new trend? And so, about 3 or 4 months ago, I showed you guys one of the new trends was Thurman Munson cards. People wanted Thurman for some unknown reason. I don't know. Again, this generation has no idea who Thurman Munson is. I don't even think millennials understand who Thurman is, because he died way back in the 80s. So he hasn't been around for so long. And again, it's not like the media is marketing and promoting some of these older players. So it was weird to me to see that Thurman Munson was getting a push. But again, that's the whole point, is you want to be listening to find out what's going on in the hobby. So listening skills is lesson number 4. Let's get to lesson number 5. Now, this goes into listening skills, which is lesson 5, is communication. And this is the other 21st century skill, because communication is all about being able to say what you want to say. And one of the hard parts about YouTube for a lot of people, which is why not everybody is as successful as others. Again, I'm a small channel. Like, I have just over 2,000 subscribers. And if you haven't hit the subscribe button, hit it right now, because that's what we're talking about. But lesson number 5 is communication skills, because if you have the ability to communicate exactly what you want to say, then guess what? You're going to have an easier time selling your cards. And we're going to get into that at the end of this episode. Again, like I said, I have a free PDF for you. You're going to want to get that. So stay to the very end. But communication skills is all about getting your message across. So what cards do you have? What cards do you want to sell? And how much are you trying to sell them for? And so we'll get into lesson number 6, which is then how do you deal with negativity? Because one of the things that happens when you are a dealer, when you're behind the table, is people will, unfortunately, I don't know why this is, but this is the way human beings are, they will come to your table and they will criticize your table. They will say, why do you have all this stuff? Your prices are too high. I don't like the things that you're selling. You should do it this way. Everybody wants to give their 2 cents. And we also, as human beings, we have this dying need to correct something. I don't know why that is, but that is just who human beings are. And so how do you deal with negativity? If you are on social media, if you try to do a YouTube channel, you're going to find that you're going to be met with negativity. And, again, the sports card investor didn't deal with negativity all that well. He decided that he was going to sue people who said negative things about him. I think that's an overreaction. But, you certainly have your right to sue whoever you want. But my point being is, how do I deal with negativity? And I just ignore it. For the most part, again, sometimes it's hard because you're sort of like, why are these people saying the things that they're saying? But you know what? You have to really center yourself. You have to go back and say, well, I have nothing to do with what they're saying. If somebody wants to criticize this channel, they have every right to criticize the channel. They have every right to call me names, to insult me, to do whatever they want. If that's what you want to do with your time, if you want to watch YouTube videos and feed into your own self-righteous whatever, and like, I know more than this guy, I know more than Doc, and I can't believe he says the things that he says. If that's what makes you feel better, then I'm glad that I make you feel better. But that's kind of one lesson that you have to learn. And you learn it as a sports card dealer because it's face to face. I mean, people will tell you all the time you have the wrong prices. Now, I know that I price things at or around comps. Like, I know that because I do the research. There are some dealers and there are eBay stores where people do not research the prices at all. They just come up with an arbitrary number. They put it up there. And I guess they're just hoping that somebody doesn't know what they're doing and they're going to get a sucker. I don't like that aspect of the hobby, but it is what it is. Not everybody is an honest person. And there are some people with eBay stores who are really trying to rip people off. So that's one of the reasons why I hope you will subscribe to this channel, because if you don't want to get ripped off, please, either put a comment down below with a link to an eBay store or DM me on Instagram or X and with the link to eBay stores. If you think somebody is ripping the public off, let me know and we'll start showcasing those things right here on this channel. And yeah, we'll put some eBay stores on blast. Like, look, these prices are way overpriced. Do not buy these cards at this level. This is what they're actually worth. So again, I appreciate everybody in the hobby. If you want to help other people, start posting, in my comments or go over to X and Instagram, what exactly is the pricing on eBay, because a lot of cards are well overpriced at this point. All right. What's lesson number 7? Well, this one is, you would think that this one is an obvious one, but when I started way back in 1983 in the hobby, spreadsheets was not a thing. I'll just put it that way. I was a geek when it came to spreadsheets, a total nerd. I had spreadsheets on everything. In fact, I used to run spreadsheets for fantasy baseball. I played fantasy baseball every single year. And I had spreadsheets and I had my own evaluation, basically calculation. And based on that, and I did it with my father, we played fantasy baseball. And based on my calculations and his ability to negotiate trades, we won the World Series in fantasy baseball 4 out of 5 years. Yeah, it was ridiculous because I just kept loading stats. Now, again, this was back before you could buy the stats, so I was literally data entering in all the spreadsheet stats. So because of that, and because the hobby at that time was just starting to do the first boom, again, we got the second boom back in the pandemic, but the first boom was really the opportunity for all these baby boomers to come back and buy the cards that they had thrown out as they got married and as they had first had kids. And because I had basically been studying the stats at such a level, I knew who the best players were, even if other, casual fans didn't. And so that was a huge advantage. Today, you have all the stats you could ever want. And Unfortunately, I think that means because everybody has stats, the hobby doesn't really run on performance anymore. It runs on media attention. So whoever gets the most eyeballs is the player that gets hot. So like the recent Luka Doncic, Anthony Davis trade, Luka's cards went through the roof. Well, they went up. I won't say they went through the roof, but they went up because that's what the media covered. And when the media covers something, that's what people start to notice. I don't know why that is. I still can't figure that out, but that's really the way the hobby works. So lesson 7 is spreadsheets. The better off you are on spreadsheets. Now, also, you want to use spreadsheets to figure out your cost basis for each card. So you want to have a spreadsheet on every card that you buy, how much you spent on it, how much you think the market value is whenever, so do it maybe like twice a year. So every 6 months, go through your cards again and reprice them and figure out, okay, what's the actual value, and then calculate off of that if I sold it for. And I like to tell people to do a calculation in the last column for profit margin, 90% of comps. So whatever it is that the current value is, that you could sell it for 90% of that, and therefore you can then subtract that from your cost, and that will tell you what your overall profit margin is. Now, again, you still have to add in fees, you still have to add in shipping if you don't charge for shipping. So there's a lot of other costs that are involved with selling in the 21st century if you're not selling at a show. That's the other reason why I like selling at a show, because there's no tax, there's no fees, there's no shipping, it's just one-to-one sales. The person comes up, they have cash, and that's it. It's like, what cards do you want? Here you go. Let's figure out a price. And then the person walks away with the cards and you have the cash. It's just easy, simple. It's the best way that I can see to selling your cards. All right. Lesson number 8 is profit margins, which we just talked about in the spreadsheet. So that's where you really want to know your costs. And this all ties back to all the other lessons. Lesson number 1. What was lesson number 1 again, folks? It was all about the value of the dollar. So if you know the value of a dollar, how you can stretch that money, again, so if you're going to go to a card show, if you're on eBay, I try to do this on eBay, but eBay's not really set up for this, which is unfortunate because I think that eBay is missing an opportunity. But if you could negotiate with somebody to basically say, like, look, I want to buy 4, 5, 6, 7 cards. What kind of package deal can you give me? Again, if 4, 5, 7 cards, they're all worth, let's say, $200 to $250. Well, if the guy's going to give you $25 off, hey, that's a deal for you. So you're getting 7 cards for $225 when they're really worth maybe, let's say, $270. Again, every bit matters, and this is where profit margin comes in. Now, again, it's tough for eBay sellers to do those kinds of deals. One, because there's no way to really package anything. Every card is listed individually, and eBay doesn't allow people to kind of bundle things from the seller side. Again, I think it's a lost opportunity. But the other thing is that there's still fees on each and every card. So even if you bundle it together, you're paying, the seller is paying fees on every single card. It's not an aggregate of a sale. And that's, I think, the problem. So, again, they're just taking too much away. We need a new platform in the hobby. I've said that for over a year now, but we really do. So what's lesson number 9? This one is huge, and people are not taking advantage of it. Now, when you do this long enough, now I was a dealer from 86 to 91, and I accumulated 8 million cards. Now, that's not the important part of this story. The important part of the story is that after a while, when you know your cost and you're selling cards for profit, eventually what happens is all the cards that you have left are all sort of paid for. Like you've broken even on all of those cards. And once you do that and you have a hoard, let's say 10,000 or more cards, why are you holding on to them? Like if you've already made the money back, like you haven't made profit on those cards, but you've already broken even on those cards, Why are you holding on to them? And this is what retailers know is we need to clearance this stuff. We need to get rid of the inventory and get as much cash back as we can. So this is why you want to do clearance sales. Just get rid of the old inventory. Why are you holding on to it? And I see this on eBay especially, where people have listed cards for 3, 4, like there's a couple cards with dealers, and I've messaged them, let's say like 2 years ago, I messaged them with an offer and they rejected it. That card is still on eBay 2 years later. And God knows how long it was on eBay before I messaged them. And so that's my point is these cards are on the market for so long. Now, I'm trying to figure out how to build an app. Anybody out there that wants to do apps, let me know, because I have a really good idea for an app that will help the hobby, especially with eBay listings. So, get in touch with me. Again, you can see down at the below X and Instagram, EDI Sportscards. Just follow me, send me a DM and say, hey, I'm into app development too. What can we do together? So once you sell off your stuff, okay, so now you get rid of all the excess inventory. Again, get the cash back. Get the cash back, because then you can deploy that cash. So yeah, if you're selling it for 40% of comps, again, 40% of nothing is a lot. Like, let's say you have $10,000 worth of cards, get $4,000 in cash. You know what you could do with $4,000? So that's my point. Again, it goes back to, if you know the value of the dollar, then get the $4,000 and go deploy it better. You could get a ton of inventory for $4,000. And why are you holding on to $10,000 worth of cards that you can't sell? Again, or it's going to take years. There's no point. I know a lot of you are really stuck on it because you're like, but it's worth $10,000. It's not worth $10,000 unless you have $10,000 in cash next to it. It's sort of like, on the one hand, okay, so on the one hand is the cards and on the other hand is the cash. Unless you see the cash in front of you, it's not worth $10,000. It's cards. Cash is cash, cards are cards. So unless you have the cash right there, somebody's saying, I will give you $10,000, it's not worth $10,000. So that's my point. Just get the cash for it. So here we go. This is the last lesson. And I'm going to show you what the free PDF is. So lesson number 10 is sales skills. And I alluded to this before, 21st century skills. So there's 5 21st century skills. I've already gone over 2 of them, leadership as well as communication. And one of the other 21st century skills is called sales skills. Now, what I want to be able to do is, if you go to Instagram, okay, you will actually see, if you see the red arrow, you will go see this post. Okay, I just put it out there. It's called Teach Me Sales Skills, and it's a carousel. I want you to read that carousel because you're going to learn about sales skills. And then if you put in the comments 5 pillars, okay, so that's the comment you need to make, 5 pillars. Just put that in the comments. I will then DM you a free PDF on teaching you how to sell sports cards using the 5 pillars of sales. Okay, so that's a free PDF. I've created it. It's not a problem. I will send you the link in the DM, but you got to put a comment on this post. Okay, so basically go to my Instagram and again, I'll send it to you for free. All right, now here's the question of the week. All right, so the question that I'm asking everybody, and put it in the comments, put your answers in the comments, is what is the hardest thing about selling cards for you? Right? So I want you to think about it. I want you to think about what's the hardest thing about selling cards for you. And the reason that I'm asking that question is because I want to know, what's the most difficult thing? Again, this goes back to listening skills. I want to listen to what you guys are feeling as obstacles. If you're selling on eBay, what's the hardest thing about selling on eBay? If you're selling at a card show, what's the hardest thing about selling at a card show? If you're a dealer, what's the hardest thing about selling as a dealer? I want to hear from everybody. I want to get the best answers that you have. Whatever answer you have will be the best answer for you. Again, this is a personal question. So let's go back to what the question is. All right, so what is the hardest thing about selling cards for you? Put your answers in the comments. So those are the top 10 lessons that I learned as a sports card dealer. And now let's get to your viewer comments. We've come to the best part of this show. It is the viewer comments. And so I have 3 comments this week. They are really good. So let's get into the first one. This one comes from Jeezy Keen. He said, very valid. The percentage of players' value that increases after the 3-month mark is very low. Only rookies, and usually the ones who cone out of nowhere, or come out of nowhere, I guess he meant. And that is from the pyramid scheme video that I put out earlier this week. So yeah, like the hobby is moving really, really fast, like faster than I've ever seen. And I said last week's show that it takes about 6 weeks basically for all the hype and all the hobby. So if you're buying cards after the first 6 weeks, you're probably paying too much for your cards. Now, again, so 6 weeks is about a month and a half. So if you're buying a card 2 months after all the hype, you're paying, let's say, 10 or 15% more than what the card is actually worth. It's not that big a deal. If you're a collector, it's not that big a deal. But if you're buying the card 3, 4, or 5 months after all the hype, you are legitimately paying anywhere from 40 to 60% more than that card is worth. So you really have to kind of look at that and say, do I really want this card? Because if you think you're buying a card to sell it on the back end, there's no more buyers after that. Like, the hobby is no longer at that point where everybody that buys, there's somebody who wants to buy it for more. There's a ceiling to this hobby now, and so everybody needs to be aware of that. So you got 6 weeks to make a profit, and after that, you're buying cards for collections. That's fine. You're paying about 10 to 15% more than what the card is worth, but again, not that big a deal. But if you're buying it 3, 4, 5 months after all the hype, you are paying anywhere from 40 to 60% more than you should. So let's get to the next comment. This one comes from Old School Rookie Collector. Hey, that's a great name. Here we go. Wemby has been graded way more than Luka, and Paul Skeens is a good example of buying a rookie card 3 months after his card come out. Makes no sense. If he wins the Cy Young Award, his cards will go up, so I don't know what you're talking about. This is also on the Card Rich Cash Poor. I don't know, Old School, I don't know what you're talking about. You just kind of like, you undermined your own statement. So, yeah, like Wemby cards, I don't know how many Wemby cards are graded. So if you have a number on that, please, I don't know why you didn't put the number in the comment since you seem to be so confident with that. So you should have put it in. I said there's over 38,000 of the Lukas graded. That's just for the Prism card. Again, I don't know which Wemby card you're talking about because there are around 1,000 Wemby rookies. So, Old School, come on, do your homework. Put it down a comment. I give you a second chance, and I'll come back to you next week if you put all that info in your comment. All right, let's get to the third and final comment this week. This one comes from Bostonian, and this one says, awesome video, Doc. Everything you said and covered in your video was spot on. I feel that the biggest shift in the hobby was when there began to be way too many flippers, gamblers that thought they could all become millionaires overnight, putting us collectors in a bad spot. Too many flippers, gamblers created many graded cards, creating high pop counts across the board for all the manufacturers, which ultimately makes the collector's PSA 10 worth less long term. Sure, pulling a Mahomes rookie card out of a Donruss grading it during the boom could have made you insane money. Now that same rookie card is only worth $400 in a PSA 9. One example, that's a Mahomes rookie, arguably the GOAT behind Brady. 95% of players and parallels are close to worthless in sports cards. 95% of people holding on to their cards are screwed and don't even know it. Hobby has tanked year after year. My theory is go for the players you like, teams you watch or admire, be smart, do your own research, blessings. All right, Bostonian. That was a big comment, and so overall, I agree with your sentiment. Overall, I do want to push back a little bit and just say that the hobby is not tanking. Even when I said that prices are coming down, and even 2 years ago when I said the hobby is going to crash, it did. Technically 30-40% down is a crash. I don't know what else to say. So there's some technicalities to these things. Again, the pandemic pushed cards 200 to 300% above value. So when there was a correction, a major correction, like I said, a tanking, a crash, 40% coming down, you still are far above before pandemic levels. And that's what I think everybody needs to know. The card values right now are still well above pre-pandemic values. So I don't really know what the actual value of these cards are. That's the problem. No one does. What I will say is that there's definitely room to go down because the balloon has still not bust. So that's why, and I said this last week, the hobby is going down very, very, very slowly. So it's being, so last year it was down, let's say 5 to 6%. This year it'll be down 5%, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. So just be aware that as you're buying cards, the trend is down. Now, I don't know how long this will be because, again, we also are dealing with inflation. And if inflation comes down, then yes, your sports card values are going to be in trouble because inflation coming down means that no one wants to pay that much for your cards anymore because the dollar is going to be worth more. Therefore, it's not going to be a real value there. So there's a lot of macroeconomics things I know that gets real complicated. I don't want to do all of that on this channel. But my point being is that when you look at card sales, look at what the comps are, and then kind of put in the back of your mind that if you're looking long term, that you have to look to the downside. So if you're buying a card, you have to think about it. That card's probably going to be down anywhere between 5 to 15% in the long term. And so you want to be picking up cards at a price that you're comfortable with losing to 5 to 15%. If you're comfortable with that as a collector, buy your cards. If you're not, then wait. Because there's too many cards out there anyway, and everybody eventually has to sell their cards. And that's what's happening now. All the baby boomers are giving their cards away. The ultra modern cards are coming down no matter what. So you can always pick those up. I like the Mahomes rookie analogy because that is a very good example. For me, I'm no longer really buying base rookie cards. I am looking for autos of these top players because that just kind of makes it a little bit more exciting for me rather than just getting base cards. The vintage, I like base, but in modern, I like autos and I like auto patches. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. Anyway, this is Doc saying, I want to say have a great weekend and I'll see you next time.